I was genuinely surprised to learn that in its nearly 60 years of business, Eon Productions has produced 31 movies. Not because that's so few, but because it's so many. Until now, I had thought the company had a total output of 24, going on 25 in a couple of months. Why so specific? Well, because Eon is the company behind James Bond, and I have long believed that that's literally all they do. But no, it's a relatively recent phenomenon that they've branched out in any meaningful way, but over the past 10 years or so, they have backed a number of theatrical productions, including New York Theatre Workshop's incredible Othello starring Daniel Craig and David Oyelowo, as well as a handful of other films. But none of those have been in direct competition with their flagship franchise. Until now. Sort of. Hello, by the way, and welcome to the Week I Review. You can call me Too Little, Too Late. And today, I am talking about the rhythm section. As with Bond, this is a film with franchise potential, an adaptation of the first novel in Mark Burnell's Stephanie Patrick series, of which there are 4 entries. Burnell himself wrote the screenplay, his first go at the medium, and having the original author handle this is not usually a great idea, and let's just be glad he was working with a good director, huh? Even though the rhythm section is arguably not a spy thriller, it sure opens like one. In media res, we are thrown into a sun-bleached city, in this case, Tangier, Morocco. Someone is walking through a house, it's in first person, immediately disorienting in its editing. We see a lizard, a parrot, a silencer being put onto a gun. Then we see Blake Lively put that gun against the head of a man in a wheelchair. Cut to black. It's 8 months ago, except it's kind of not. Lively stares through the camera as images of a happy family flash across the screen. These two are in the first person. We can only assume that this is her family and that they are dead. And for 3 years, as it turns out, everyone gone in a plane crash, and she has spiraled in its wake, going from top of her class at Oxford to a drug addict in a brothel, as is the cliche. But this isn't some sort of misery porn. The first and only John we see turns out to be a journalist named Proctor who knows her real identity, Stephanie Patrick, and is working on a story about the crash. Turns out it wasn't an accident. The plane was brought down in a terror attack. Now, the fact that a terror attack could have been hidden is one of those kind of nonsensical things you just have to accept. I assume it is a result of the source material's 1999 publication, long before folks on Twitter could take credit for attacks, no matter how hard the government tried to cover them up. It's a Gemini Man-like in that respect, an old story whose technology wasn't really updated to match its new era. Although no specific date is ever given, people use smartphones with large screens that take clear photos, meaning it can't be too far in the past. And yet, instead of using GPS to find specific coordinates, people use like MapQuest or whatever, and then a digital compass app. I don't know. It's not great if you think about it, but because I didn't until after the fact, it was fine. Anyways, Patrick knows the truth now and ends up connecting with Proctor's source, an ex-MI6 agent known as B and played by a rather scruffy Jude Law. Since she's got nothing to lose and he's lonely, she convinces him to train her so that she can confront the men responsible for the attack and get some closure, violently. And he makes her stronger, sharper, and deadlier. But Patrick is a very human protagonist, so it's not an easy process. There are a lot of movies about quote-unquote normal people becoming badasses, but they don't usually star women, nor do they lean into the difficulty of it on both a physical and emotional level, the way that the rhythm section does. The truth is that Patrick spends most of the movie unable to do the things that she is being asked to do. She keeps trying, but when it's time to do the deed, she fails, or succeeds on a technicality, and innocents get hurt as a result. And she has to live with that for the rest of her life. Now, Some of that is more implicit, which is likely the result of the fact that the film is kinda too short. 107 minutes is pretty svelte for a full-on origin story, especially in 2020, and the rhythm section definitely just skates past things. Any given scene feels like it has an appropriate amount of space, but sometimes there's just not much connective tissue between them. The first trailer shows that there was more than what we got, including an extension of one interaction that I'm glad was cut, as well as shots from an entirely missing action scene that appears to take place in a diner where Patrick goes hunting. I am curious what that was and how it would have fit into the larger narrative, but it also doesn't matter. Clearly, the final stages of editing here were vicious, and my guess is that the rough cut was probably just as disjointed but lacked the tight pacing that makes it not really matter all that much in the final film. I mentioned before that the rhythm section is not a spy thriller. Really, it feels more like a drama with the pacing and occasional set pieces of an action film. So it doesn't feel like actioner, though that doesn't take away from the achievements of the action itself, because the scenes that we do get are great. Reed Morano, probably best known for her contributions to The Handmaid's Tale, including directing its first 3 episodes, has a keen understanding of the value of longer takes, and they are used throughout this film in drama and action. For the latter, well, the rhythm section has the best Wonder-type action scene in years. A car chase shot entirely from the passenger seat. Back in Tangier, shortly after we catch up back to that opening, Patrick jacks a car and is pursued by another. For the next few minutes, the camera never leaves her side, whipping back and forth to show you what is ahead, what's behind, and also how she's dealing with all of it. And even though you know that there are masked cuts in all of that camera movement, it just doesn't matter. The moment-to-moment intensity, looking out the window as the car slides towards the edge of a cliff, and then whipping back as bullets ricochet off the door and Patrick slams on the gas, and we just keep going. It's awesome. And it's not the only great moment. Also notable is the training fight between Jude Law and Blake Lively. There is one cut for an insert about 2/3 of the way through that I assume was because there wasn't one completely perfect take. But that gets to the fact that this isn't a scene with a whole bunch of wild camera movements that allow you to switch seamlessly between takes. There are no doubles or fake outs. 1917, eat your heart out. But Morano adds even more fundamental value to this film by reminding everyone why it's important to have women direct movies of this type in particular, as well as, in general. Because look, this is a movie where Blake Lively plays 2 different types of prostitutes, and though never actually naked, does find herself in various states of undress. And it's not sexy. And it shouldn't be, but it's not like that's ever stopped anyone before. The one scene that could be an exception is the one that should be. And even that is pretty gosh damn restrained. You can easily imagine the way a male-gazed version of this movie would look, with all kinds of emphasis on Lively's body that would be neither necessary nor appropriate. And I mean, I'm a guy, and I'm not going to pretend to be mad every time I see a gorgeous woman wearing scantily clad clothing in a movie. But there's a time and a place, and too many male directors have made clear that they don't understand what that is. Morano, on the other hand, demonstrates a genuine respect for her lead at perhaps the expense of a certain type of moviegoer, and it simply makes the film better. From the first frame to the last, the rhythm section is dedicated to making Stephanie Patrick human. One who wants to kill a bunch of people, sure, but human nonetheless. And when Patrick finally becomes the badass who we spent this movie watching her try to be, it feels earned and like a solid start to a franchise, albeit one that will never be. In its first weekend, the rhythm section bombed horrendously, quite literally setting a record for the worst opening of any movie playing to more than 3,000 screens. It averaged just $918 per, totaling $2.8 million on a $50 million budget. Which, ouch. And who knows why? Maybe it was the dumb name, which almost put me off, or the fact that critics in general didn't enjoy it nearly as much as I did, or like at all. But whatever the reason, it seems that Eon hasn't got a new juggernaut on his hands, and that the first Stephanie Patrick adaptation will be the last. And that's a shame. 8.2 out of 10. Thanks so much for watching, and thank you particularly to my patrons, my mom, Hamry and Marco, Kat Saracata, Benjamin Schiff, Anthony Cole, @Blasian FMA, Magnolia Denton, and Elliot Fowler. If you like this video, that's great. If not, I'm sorry. If you want to see more, please subscribe. I hope to see you next week.